Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We are thrilled to have you with us in person and watching online. We have a map that we will be sharing very shortly of Minnesota and our registered attendees. And it is so great to have our neighbors in Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas join us, as well as coast to coast from California to Florida. 55% of our attendees are people with Parkinson's disease. 27% are spouses or partners to somebody with Parkinson's, and 34% of our attendees have been living with Parkinson's for under 5 years. So today's program is being recorded, and we will email all registered attendees the link to view the recording along with the resources that we will talk about today. So a few housekeeping items. This is a Parkinson's friendly program, so no problem if your pill timer goes off. And if you're uncomfortable, please feel free to step to the side or to the back of the room and listen while you stand or stretch. So please check out your folders for today's program and speaker bios and information on each host organization. We also have a program evaluation in the folder for you as well. We will have a break at 10:40 a.m. And if our online audience has any difficulties or questions, please write them in the Q&A. After each presentation, we will take a few minutes for questions and answers from our in-person and online audience. I want to share a big thank you to our sponsors of today's program: Acadia, Amneal, Boston Scientific, Kyowa Kirin, Medtronic, Neurocrine, and Supernus. You may visit their tables along with our other supporters and community organizations. With that, let's get started by sharing a little bit about each host organization.
Good morning. My name is Josh Allman. I have the pleasure of introducing the University of Minnesota Udall Center. My first slide is cut out. I had a really cool picture of the University of Minnesota, but this is a grant that we obtained in 2016 was the first time until 2021, and then in 2021 we got it renewed again. This is something that, just to give a little context here. So in 2021, the National Institutes of Health, which is the agency that administers the grant, handed out a little over 11,200 grants. The Udall Center, there was 2 available that year, and we were able to obtain one of those. And so it's a very prestigious thing that we were able to obtain. The goals of the grant are to define the changes in brain circuitry that underlie motor and cognitive dysfunction in Parkinson's, develop new deep brain stimulation therapeutic approaches, and to integrate neuroimaging, neurophysiology, clinical assessments, and use deep brain stimulation technologies to better understand and improve the lives of all PD patients. We're going to accomplish these goals by recording in several different structures within the brain, both on the cortex, on top of the brain, and in deep brain structures. So what are we doing? We're trying to understand how the brain communicates. That's what we're trying to do. Now, early on, we felt like the brain communicated kind of like a switchboard. One structure is connected to another structure. It's very simple. That's not the case. The case is the brain's a little bit more like a smartphone. You've got an app that you're looking at, but what's going on in the background? You've got apps going on in the background that are communicating with each other. They're communicating with the outside world. They're doing things that you don't even know they're doing them when they're doing them. Sometimes when you've got problems in those apps, miscommunication, what happens? It can affect the phone. Same thing in the brain. You've got things going on in the background that can affect how the brain functions. What we're trying to understand is how those things that are problematic, miscommunicating, are leading to signs and symptoms of Parkinson's. But I'm sure all of you have heard, kind of like the cell phone setup, everyone has their own little setup, their own apps that they install. When you've met one PD patient, you've met one PD patient. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to design therapies that are patient specific, that they're tailored to each individual person's signs and symptoms and treat those specifically for that patient. So what are we actually trying to do? We're trying to assess and examine and treat the cardinal symptoms, bradykinesia, rigidity, tremor, but we're trying to do other things as well. A few years ago, we had a symposium and we asked people there, what are things that you feel like are not addressed? And we took that to heart. So what we're trying to do is, in addition to the cardinal symptoms, we're trying to address cognition, such as working memory. We're trying to address gait and balance and posture. We're trying to address speech, sleep. A lot of these things that people said, these are problems that are just not being addressed. So how are we doing this? We have a large team that are working on 3 large projects and a smaller project. And all of those projects, those research projects, are supported by an imaging core. They're supported by a clinical core. They're supported by biostats core and administrative core. Project 1, research project 1, is led by Dr. Vitek, Jerry Vitek. This project looks at cortical, subcortical recordings, how they communicate with each other, and how those are related to motor signs and cognition. Project 2 is led by Colum MacKinnon. He uses brain recordings and functional MRI to analyze effects of stimulation in the globus pallidus, one of the target structures, to look at things that are levodopa resistant, such as gait, posture, speech, cognition. Research project 3 is led by Matt Johnson and Tate Netoff. This project is a preclinical project looking at changes in brain activity and deep structures in the brain and novel stimulation sites, utilizing that information to try to understand how the areas are affected within motor signs and cognition as well. The Catalyst project, led by yours truly, is looking at brain activity that is read in real time. And we try to use stimulation, very precise timed stimulation, to try to interfere with those brain signals that we think are problematic. These research projects are supported by an imaging core, which is led by Noam Harrell. He uses high resolution imaging, diffusion tensor imaging to define the pathways or the lines of communication, and also substructures within each structure of the brain. We have a clinical core that's led by Scott Cooper and Paul Tewitt. They recruit patients, provide infrastructure, build databases, clinical assessments, track patients long-term. Side note, does anybody know, who here knows Dr. Tewitt? Okay, who here knows Dr. Cooper? Who here knows both of them? If you have the pleasure of sitting in the room with both of them at the same time, the entertainment factor is at least an 8 or 9 out of 10. You'll learn at least one new thing for sure. Our biostats core is led by Lynn Eberly. They provide data management, quality control, statistics, machine learning analyses, make sure that we're following NIH guidelines for handling and sharing our data. And our administrative core, led by Dr. Vitek and Jeremy Duncan, orchestrate all of the center activities. They coordinate early career enhancement opportunities for early stage investigators, trainees, promote community engagement, monitor progress, and basically make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're accomplishing the goals we said we're going to accomplish. And I can assure you that Dr. Vitek makes sure that this happens. The people that support the center, all of the co-investigators, all the people that provide support are listed here and here and here and here. And this is probably not all the people, but as you can see, there's a lot of effort that goes into this. There's a lot of people that put time into this. But the most important thing, of course, is the people that volunteer for the research. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Anushka Sheel, National Director of Programs and Services with the American Parkinson Disease Association. And APDA's mission is that every day we provide the support, education, and research that will help everybody impacted by Parkinson's disease live life to the fullest. No matter where you live, APDA is here for you. We have a network of APDA chapters and information and referral centers around the country, and each chapter and center provides programs and services that support the Parkinson's community. Some of these programs and services include phone and email helplines staffed by local experts in Parkinson's resources, free educational programs throughout the year, connection with APDA resources, including our press support group for newly diagnosed individuals, our Connecting Through Arts Creative Arts program, and our financial support program for people with Parkinson's who are in need of financial assistance. APDA also has 8 centers for advanced research around the country, and these centers facilitate research at the forefront of investigations into the causes, treatments, and finding the cures for Parkinson's disease. In addition to the resources that we have on the ground, like our Minnesota chapter here in Minnesota, we can connect with anyone, anywhere through our extensive website and our toll-free number, which is 800-223-2732. There is a tremendous amount of useful content on our website, including information about the disease itself, education and support, details about the research we fund, and more. We have an extensive list of publications on our website available for download, or you can order free hard copies to be mailed to you at no cost. Almost all of our publications are available in Spanish as well. And we have a calendar of virtual events that allows you to join free virtual Parkinson's classes around the country, focusing on singing, dance, yoga, Tai Chi, and more. APDA also offers a library of webinars archived on our website for you to view whenever it's convenient for you. APDA is here for you in Minnesota. We offer many supports, including connections with Parkinson's disease exercise classes and support groups statewide, free educational programs throughout the year, a weekly e-newsletter, and a financial support program for people with Parkinson's who need financial assistance. We also hold an annual optimism walk, which is a fun community event with a walk, silent auction, cakewalk, resource fair, face painting, and other great family activities. And our walk this year is September 9th in Roseville. I encourage you to get connected with us, and you can reach us by phone and email. Our information is on the slide. And you can also connect with us on our website and on Facebook. If you don't already receive our weekly e-newsletter, you can sign up by emailing us, and our email address is right on the screen. So thank you. And with that, I want to hand it over to Erin at the Parkinson's Foundation to introduce their organization.
Good morning. Just want to say how great is it to be together in person, online, and to see 3 great organizations come together to host this event. Good morning, I'm Erin McGee, Senior Director of Community Outreach and Education for the Minnesota and Dakotas chapter of the Parkinson's Foundation. We are the nation's largest community for people living with Parkinson's, those who love them and those who are working to end the disease. The foundation makes life better for people with Parkinson's by improving care and advancing research toward a cure. Every day in everything we do, we are working to make life better for people with Parkinson's. To achieve our mission, we pursue 3 goals: improve care for everyone with Parkinson's, advance research toward a cure, and empower and educate our global community. Today's program is a great example of one of the things we are doing to help us meet our goals. Another example of our mission in action is our PD generation. This research study offers genetic testing for Parkinson's-related genes and genetic counseling for people with Parkinson's at no cost. Commit to helping us advance research today. Check out your eligibility and enroll now to be a part of PD generation at parkinson.org/PD generation. We are excited to share the expansion of our global care network. In addition to our 51 medical centers around the world designated as centers of excellence, 6 new comprehensive care centers, we introduce community partners in Parkinson's care. This program is designed to educate and prepare staff to provide better care for people with Parkinson's living in care communities and home care agencies. The program, formerly Struthers Parkinson's Care Network, funded by the Edmund J. Stafford Foundation, has continued to expand and now includes more than 100 member sites. Joan Gardner and Rose Wickman are the program's original creators and national co-directors. They are committed to ensuring Parkinson's education for individuals receiving these services through educating and supporting care communities and care agencies. So I encourage you to check out parkinson.org/community partners to see the full list of all the agencies. And lastly, if you're interested in getting involved, our PEF surveys is meant to capture the community's perspective on various topics in Parkinson's disease. We hope that you'll join up by signing up for this initiative, where we invite you to complete 10 to 20-minute surveys on various topics, such as mental health, telehealth, and care partner concerns. We always report findings back to the community, and you can learn more at parkinson.org/PF surveys. And with that, we'll start with our first presentation.
I am excited to introduce our first presenter today, Beth Wittry. She is a board-certified clinical specialist in neurologic and geriatric physical therapy, and she currently works at Courage Kenny Rehabilitation Institute at United Hospital in St. Paul, with a special interest in treating individuals with neurodegenerative diseases and movement disorders, stroke, and brain injury. Thank you so much, Beth, for being here with us today.
All right. Hi, everybody. How is that for volume wise? Are we hearing okay? Okay, I know it can be a little challenging in these big rooms. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you guys about this topic of exercise and Parkinson's disease. I work almost exclusively with individuals with Parkinson's in the outpatient setting, and this is a topic I feel really passionate about. I think it's especially fun that we're here on World Parkinson's Day and that we get to spend it together. So thank you all for joining us. We have a few big goals today. The first one is to explain the importance of exercise for individuals with Parkinson's disease, and then identify PD-specific exercise guidelines and recommendations. And lastly, discuss strategies and resources to optimize exercise. We all know that exercise is important. That's nothing new or groundbreaking. It has health benefits from everything from decreasing the risk of cardiovascular disease to help manage blood pressure and weight. It can help with strength, cognitive improvements, helping improve how we move and maintaining independence. What is a little bit more new and specific to Parkinson's are these two words here. So one being neuroprotection. The idea is that Parkinson's is a progressive, it's a degenerative disease. So we're losing neurons in a specific area of your brain, specifically dopamine, which helps regulate movement. And the emerging research is really that exercise can help protect cells that are at risk of damage or death. Kind of a line of defense for these vulnerable cells. And if we can protect that dopamine system, if we can protect these cells through exercise that are degenerating, the hope is that we can slow or modify disease progression with exercise. The other big word is neuroplasticity, meaning our brain is plastic. It can change and adapt, and there's things we can do to help that change occur. And one of those things is exercise. And so if we can kind of facilitate new neuron connections and strengthen existing ones, recruit new pathways and brain areas and in these areas of the brain that have had some damage, that we can hopefully maximize movement and function. So if we think about making new connections between different areas and finding new ways to move with exercise. Those are kind of those big picture things. But there's kind of a laundry list here of Parkinson's specific exercise benefits. And a few I really want to point out today. So the first one being improved UPDRS score. And this is a scale that indicates disease severity. And a lot of the research coming out is that individuals participating in consistent exercise are showing an improvement in these scores, meaning less severe disease. The second one being quality of life. And that looks different for all of us sitting here, but arguably is one of the most important things and one of our biggest goals. And again, exercise can have a big benefit on quality of life and as we go through disease progression. If we think more about those motor symptoms, so that would be that rigidity or stiffness, that bradykinesia, which is slow, small movements, postural instability, meaning balance is more challenging. We're also seeing a big benefit of exercise on those type of areas. So decreasing falls risk with better balance, improved quality of walking, less freezing of gait, maintaining our posture and our flexibility. But there's also been some evidence that it can address those non-motor symptoms again. And like you heard just earlier, that those can be really hard to address. So things like energy, through better sleep quality, improved cognition or your memory and thinking, addressing mood or depression or those lower motivation to do things, and even things like constipation. I have a couple of videos here. We'll see if we can get them to play. This one here is an individual, and these are taken about a month apart. So he came in and did a turn, as you can see on the left there. And then after a month of very consistent exercise, how that can improve. I don't know if I can play it again here. Oops. And then the next one is actually just a week apart. So she came in, videoed before working out, and then a week later after working out. And you can see that walking quality with bigger steps. She's swinging her arms, she's moving bigger. Now these are great things, and exercise isn't new to these individuals. It's just a tune-up, but it can show you that movement quality can really improve if we can get people moving and exercising. Okay, so where do I sign up, right? Exercise sounds great. Where do we go from here? And the consensus recommendations through the Parkinson's Foundation, the World Health Organization, ACSM, National Institute of Health, they kind of show this ideal amount of exercise. And that being 150 minutes total of moderate to high intensity exercise. And this is broken up into a couple different buckets. The first one being aerobic exercise, the next one being strength training, and the last being more balance and agility. And we'll go through each of these individual. So that first bucket, aerobic exercise. So cardio, how do we get heart pumping, big muscle movements, going through anything with that? So the ideal frequency you're looking at is 3 days a week for at least 30 minutes. Again, this intensity piece is important, that moderate to high intensity exercise. And we'll go through this a little bit more detail coming up, but I want to point out that this is going to be a common theme. And the type, really, I listed some here, but what I want to emphasize is the options are endless. Anything that we can do to get that heart rate up counts as aerobic exercise. So anything from walking to biking, swimming, there's a ton of exercise classes that we'll talk about. Anything that we can do that's those large cardio type movements counts. And this is where we start to think about how that will look different for everyone. So walking still counts whether you're walking outside or you're walking in an apartment hallway with a U-step walker or rollator walker, and finding ways as the disease progresses that we're still getting this cardio exercise in. And we'll talk about some things coming forward, but just pointing out these pictures that walking with trekking poles, getting on a new step, doing boxing classes, whether that be standing up or sitting down, all of those are cardio type exercises that can be enjoyable and fun to do. The next bucket here is this strength training. So similar frequency and time, you're thinking 2 to 3 days a week of at least 30 minutes. We're trying to have that not consecutive. So if we do strength training on Monday, we're trying to wait off until Wednesday and Thursday to do more strength exercises. In an ideal world, we're doing 2 sets of each exercise for 8 or 12 reps. Again, this common thread, intensity, moderate to high intensity exercise is really key. Again, there's so many options for how we get this strength training in. And a couple of things to think about are, how can we make it functional? Meaning, how can we make things we're already doing in our daily life and turn them into strength training? For a couple of reasons, because then as we're doing those, hopefully those get easier. Plus, it's easier to work into our day. So things like standing up from low surfaces, getting on and off the floor, reaching overhead for things can all be turned into really nice strength training exercises. Postural strength, or the ability to maintain kind of that good upright posture, can play in here. And then again, an exercise class. So many exercise classes combine aerobic exercise and strength training. So you just get a lot of bang for your buck with that. And this last big bucket is balance and agility. So thinking 2 to 3 days a week, again, moderate to high intensity exercise. And the type here is a little bit different. So we're thinking with balance and agility, how can we challenge our footwork, our ability to stay steady on our feet, and do that in a little bit more creative way, again, to make that brain work. So some ideas that come in here are more that large amplitude training. So this would be like your LSVT big classes, your PWR classes. A lot of people really enjoy doing yoga or Tai Chi for the flexibility component. Dancing, anything that you can add dual tasking in. So you're making your brain think while you're doing something. It's kind of that idea of chewing bubble gum and walking are important here. I get asked, not sure how to get that out of the way, but I get asked a lot, what's the best type of exercise? And it's really simple, the type that's enjoyable, that's fun, that's motivating, because that's the type you're going to do, right? And any exercise that we're doing is better than any exercise that we're not doing. And this is where being creative and figuring out what works best for you is so important. So, you know, some people might really enjoy going for a walk, and other people going to the gym and getting on the bike is the most important. And finding whatever that is that feels somewhat fun anyway, it is the best type that we can do. And as promised, we're going to get a little bit more into that intensity piece, mainly because this is what drives those brain changes that we talked about earlier. So to get those new connections, we have to really drive intensity. And so if you look at this scale and you think of 6 as being no exertion, you're not working hard at all, to 20 being the hardest you can imagine working, The goal range would be 12 to 14. So you are working somewhat hard. This exercise feels challenging. You might be breathing a little bit heavy. It's hard to sit and talk and hold a conversation. And you might even have to take some rest breaks intermittently, right? And this is where it can be hard to do this and hard to find ways to challenge yourself, especially as disease progresses. And I'm hoping we can help problem solve that today as we go on. All right, again, I know you're all ready to sign up, but there's a lot of barriers to exercise, right? It's easy to stand up here for me and tell you all these good things about it, and a lot harder to go home and implement a plan and get going. So kind of the meat and potatoes today is a couple things. I really want to address some tips to optimize exercise performance, and then we're going to get into some barriers and problem solving as well. So this first piece, making a plan. I think exercise can feel really overwhelming. We get thrown a lot of resources, but actually the day-to-day thing of how we do it is tricky. And this is where consulting a professional, whether that be a physical therapist or an exercise professional to help make a plan, can be a really good tool. If you have more of an exercise background or history, maybe you feel comfortable making your own plan, but any way you can spell it out and have specifics instead of, oh yeah, I'm just going to go exercise for 20 minutes, I think is a good thing. Schedule it. So just like you would a meeting, an appointment, going to the doctors, having it in your calendar, a specific time of day can help maintain that consistency, and setting reminders, just like those pill reminders, is a good thing as well. This next piece of social support. So can you bring a friend or recruit family members or go to a class where you're with other individuals with Parkinson's? Is so important for a couple of reasons. The first one is accountability. If someone's showing up at your door and knocking to get you out to the car, we're more apt to do it than if we don't have that. Two comes back to that enjoyment piece. So it can be a lot more enjoyable to do things as a group or with others who are going through similar things. And the last piece is for assistance or help if we need it. If we have a family member with us or a friend, can they help us with equipment or get set up and provide pointers with that. The next step is this being confident. And I think all of these kind of go into that, but the more we can have a plan and have an idea and have expectations that we're going to be successful with this, the better. And really the key is that you all feel confident going about exercise. And I think anything that we feel confident in doing, again, we're more likely to stick with it. I think I've said this a lot already today, but about what's most important, but the setting goals piece is really so important. Finding what motivates you for this exercise. And again, this is going to look different for every single person. A couple that I've heard in the past few weeks are to stay independent. So maybe that looks like being able to move and access all levels of your home or doing your own laundry still independently. Maybe it's walking in the grocery store and being able to pick out what items you want. I often get grandkids, being able to get on and off the floor with the grandkids or run with them. But finding or choosing those things that drive you can help make exercise more meaningful and just not another thing that we have to cross off the list. Exercise isn't all or none. It's not this zero-sum game where we have to get those 150 minutes. That's the ideal number, but even if we're getting 50 minutes a week, that's better than nothing. And so I think knowing that you can start there and maybe the goal is to get to that ideal range, but anywhere we can start and go from there is perfect. With exercise, Parkinson's makes it difficult to kind of self-regulate this movement, right? Both movement size and movement intensity. Things don't feel as automatic as they used to. And a couple of strategies to point out to help with that are really along this move big. Music can be a really good tool. So if you go to Spotify or just even on YouTube, and I just typed in Parkinson's playlist, so many songs will come up that are set to a certain beat. And if we can move to this beat and drive that movement, it can be a good kind of reminder or cue to do that. Using different cues. So the bottom picture on the left, if you're doing stepping exercises or reaching exercises using a target. I know I saw a couple walkers already today with a TheraBand around of a cue to step to the TheraBand or to the band. That's all these cues, right? That can help take away or make movement more automatic. And that's helpful when we're trying to exercise. Cues can look like someone nagging you too, right? Stand up tall, take bigger steps. And those can be really good reminders as we're going through exercise too. This idea of forced exercise, or having more of a facilitation of that movement. So on the bottom right, you see an individual with Parkinson's on an elliptical, and someone there is with her actually moving the elliptical arm. So it's going faster than maybe she could choose to go on her own. And that can be a really good one with a new step as well. A treadmill can be a good tool with that because you can kind of force that speed, equipment like that. Choosing the time of day. So when you feel best, whether that's energy wise or symptom wise. Some people really like to exercise on their medication on time, just because they feel better. But knowing when that time of day is for you, and getting it in a routine and scheduling it is great. Kind of that dreaded technology word, but we can use it for our advantage too. So looking at using a step counter to track how many steps you're getting a day, or some sort of activity tracker where you're measuring your workouts, or even measuring heart rate to see how intense you're exercising. Now, this doesn't have to be fancy. It can also be a paper and pencil, right? And so you're writing down, maybe I exercised for 20 minutes this week, and 4 weeks later, I see I'm doing that 30 minutes. And seeing that progress, I think, can be really motivating. But I do think tracking in some fashion can help keep you going. Like I said before, there's a lot of barriers to exercise, especially when we add in impacts from Parkinson's. One of the biggest is movement is just hard, especially as we get, or individuals are getting to later stages or progression of the disease. And a couple thoughts or reminders about this. Exercise is going to look very different for everyone. So what might feel like aerobic exercise for one person is going to look and feel very different for aerobic exercise for the next person. So thinking of a walk outside with no walker, going as fast as you can be exercise, but also walking in an apartment hallway with a rollator, again, is exercise too. And we're going to continue to talk about ways we can find how to address exercise as symptoms are higher. Start where you are. It doesn't have to be fancy or whatnot, but just starting at the level you are, and then we can work from there. But again, something is better than nothing. Trying to make it functional. And this pulls in, again, anything we do in daily life that feels hard, we often can make it into an exercise. So that could be getting in and out of bed, rolling in bed, going up and down stairs. Things like that can easily be turned into an exercise, and then have the added bonus of transferring back to those skills when we need them to. Modify. Any way we can find to be creative, let's go for it, and let's problem solve those things. Kind of to point out this idea, these pictures. So the top picture there, they're all doing kind of the same big step or lunge movement, but they're all doing it in very different ways, and it all counts as exercise. So the first one, she has a really stable surface there and doing a lunge. The bottom two are using more challenging ways with trekking poles or overhead straps, but knowing that there's different ways that we can facilitate this exercise for everyone. And again, just kind of using adaptive equipment or assisted devices to your benefit. It's great to use walkers or walking sticks. There's ways to be creative with whatever problem you're having. So let's say it's hard to hold on to the bike handle. Can we find a sticky glove or something like that to help with it? And that's where an exercise or Parkinson's expert can help with that as well. As we talked about earlier, Parkinson's impacts our balance and postural stability. So there's often a high risk and fear of falling, which impacts that confidence piece. So utilizing our upper extremity support with something stable, positioning yourself against a wall or next to a couch. So if you do fall while doing exercise, you're safe. Using seated options, and we'll touch on these here in just a little bit, but not only seated equipment, but seated exercise classes, seated exercise moves are all really good things. I know energy is often a hard thing, right? That feeling of just low energy, a lot of fatigue. And a couple of things with this. First off, we can break it up. So say your goal is to do 30 minutes of exercise a day. It's perfectly fine to go 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the middle of the day, and 10 minutes at night to get in that 30 minutes. And it has the same benefits as if you would do it continuous. The next piece is thinking about intervals. So maybe if you're doing some sort of exercise, you're going really hard for a minute or 2 minutes, and then for a minute or 2 minutes, you're going easy and kind of recovering. But using that to your benefit. There's a lot of pain, right? Orthopedic pain, joint pain, pain from not moving as well. And while it seems kind of counterintuitive, often the more we can get moving, the better we feel. Again, finding ways to maybe be less weight bearing. So whether that be in sitting, whether that be using a pool or doing some sort of aquatic therapy, using upper extremity support to decrease weight bearing on joints, all can be really good things. And this is, again, where if you haven't tried to, address pain in the past, it might be a good time to address that with your physician or physical therapist so that you can participate easier in an exercise program. That orthostatic hypotension, or the drop in blood pressure, or dizziness or lightheadedness when we're in standing. First off, I would encourage, if you haven't already, to again discuss with your medical provider. And if they're aware, then thinking more of those recumbent or seated exercises where you're not having to stand or change positions a lot. Some people have really good luck with an abdominal binder, or kind of a binder around your stomach. Aquatic therapy can actually be really good for this because you have more pressure from that pool to help keep blood pressure up. Certain places just aren't super accessible, right? They're hard to get into. There's stairs, there's maybe not bathroom access, things like this. I'd really encourage you, people are very receptive if you call ahead and try to problem solve some of those things, or at least get an idea of how you can get in and out and where parking is and all of those things. But they're important to think about. So when you show up, it's not like, oh, I have to go home now, right? There's nowhere to get in or how to access this. Cost can be a big barrier. I'm going to show some free options coming up that can be really great. Anything in your home too, again, being creative with walking in your home or outside, using stairs or just heavy objects around your house. The APDA has a financial support program that I'm assuming could help cover some of these costs, whether it be equipment wise or class participation. A lot of insurance programs have items that can help with cost of gym membership, like silver sneakers, and some call it something different, but it's along the same line of silver sneakers. Transportation can be tricky, especially if you're not driving, or let's take winter weather, anything like that. There's some virtual options, or again, thinking of things you can do in the home. We don't always have to go somewhere to exercise. Or if metro mobility is something you would be interested in, that can be an option as well. Considering it's the first nice day I think we've had in about 6 months, weather is a big thing. I mean, we live in Minnesota, and it makes it really hard to do things, not only to be outside, but to get anywhere, to want to kind of traverse out into that weather. Again, I can't give you many problem solving strategies for the weather, but I can tell you the more we think about it in advance and kind of have those expectations and thoughts around it, the better. So if we're going to do home classes, just knowing that's our plan, and we go from there. So thinking community resources, I know there's some great tables over there today. The first being, if gym or a fitness center is something that sounds interesting to you, YMCAs can have great equipment, especially some like new steps and bikes, some more of those seated equipment options that some gyms won't have, and silver sneakers can be a good benefit with that. A lot of communities have community recreation centers that again are just smaller and a little bit more, I think, accessible and friendly, and often more cost friendly too. I know St. Paul, for example, I think you can join their fitness centers for $60 a year. It's a really good cost savings. A lot of facilities have indoor walking tracks, and you can pay just to use the walking track. A mall is a good option in the winter. They often have special walking hours. A lot of the big domes with indoor fields will allow you to walk around at certain times of day. So thinking about those options and finding them via calling or asking around or in support groups can be really good. There's a ton of community classes, which is a great option because you get with the expert at that time, right? You have someone with you leading this and modifying with you. Courage Kenny, Struthers, M Health Fairview all have options, and I think probably have more information over there. If any of those are near to you, I encourage you to reach out. They have a lot of options. So maybe you're interested in doing Tai Chi, or maybe you want to do more strength focus. There's options out there, again, to find what's enjoyable to you and what's fun to you. Rocksteady Boxing is a boxing specific Parkinson's class. Last time I looked, there was over, I think, 15 programs spread out through the metro area. And I've worked with individuals who have just loved that. And it's a way to stay active and again, be with people and go from there. The YMCA does a pedaling for Parkinson's program. So it's like a cycle class. I think last time I looked, this was only at maybe 2 or 3 YMCAs, but if it's close to you, I think it could be really fun to combine cycling and music, and again, that support system. There were not a ton of good things about COVID, but one of them was that these virtual options and resources kind of exploded. And I know virtual can be hard, technology can be hard, but if you're willing and open to it, there are some really great things out there. A lot of these are free, which is nice. And a lot of them are on demand, meaning you can take them whenever you want. And again, choose what you want to take, whether that be a cardio chair fitness, whether that be a high level big program, anything like that, that they modify for both level and intensity. So I actually did a lot of Googling for this. So Stanford Parkinson's Community Outreach lists all of the options they have found. So there were over 100 different links and videos, but everything from dance to Tai Chi to PWR, almost everything you can imagine. And again, all free and all on demand. This Working on Wellness Foundation and Power for Parkinson's has really good offerings. And the Parkinson's Foundation does a Fitness Friday where they do a live class and then it's on demand too, which can be really fun. Live, there are some options as well. If that sounds like, having that accountability and something scheduled to keep you on track would be better for you. A lot of times these do have a cost to them. But again, that Stanford Parkinson's Community Outreach has a lot listed. Rogue Physical Therapy and Wellness, I've had a lot of people enjoy their offerings, and same with PWR, Exercise for Brain Change. So going to those websites or Googling, I'm sure you can find them pop up. And if technology is scary, this is maybe where recruiting someone to help with that, at least get it set up and going, can be a good thing. The really nice thing about virtual is that you can either slow down the playback speed. So if things feel really fast, you can slow it down and have more time to complete the movements and do the exercises. And you can also pause. So if we need a break, if something comes up, all of that you can do. I just wanted to point out really quickly a couple educational resources. The Parkinson's Foundation puts out a Fitness Counts, and the Dave Finney Foundation does an Every Victory Counts. Both of these you can either have mailed to you or they're found online, but they both go into a lot of exercise type things that can be really helpful. And the Every Victory Counts addresses a lot of components of Parkinson's. I can't get out of here without doing some sort of shameless plug for physical therapy. So when can we get rehab or physical therapy involved? And one of those is if you're looking to establish an exercise routine. Often, a physical therapy well-versed in Parkinson's will know resources and have ways to modify, whether that be at the gym or in your home. If new goals or a change in function comes up, if movement is getting harder, if doing certain tasks around the home is getting harder, if you're falling, all of those physical therapy or occupational therapy or speech therapy can help with. And then I like to throw in this tune-up and thinking about it. We go to the dentist every 6 months to a year, and I really think that the care for Parkinson's is going more that direction. So can we get these regular check-ins with your therapy team to stop problems before they become big problems? And I really think that's important when you're dealing with something like Parkinson's that we know is changing and progressing. So I want to open it up to questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. But also I did leave my email there. So if anyone has any questions that come up after this, please feel free to reach out.
We can just raise our hand and we'll have a person come with you with a microphone if you have questions.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I just have a question in regards to, you did mention exercises that are helpful with freezing.
Yeah.
And are you going to tell us about
Yeah.
what those exercises are? Just curious, because I think there's probably people here that experience freezing now. And what tips do you have?
Yes, freezing it's a tricky one, right? Freezing, anything with rhythmic movement can be really good. So if you can get on a bike, a new step, a treadmill, things that keep that sequencing and rhythm are really good. Using tape marks for stepping, or again, those long like targets can be a really good thing for freezing, to give some sort of cue outside of themselves, where it's because again, it's kind of an automatic thing. In general, though, exercise and freezing, it's going to take a little bit of time to see that carryover specifically to freezing. So any exercise can help address it in general, but it's going to take some time to see some of those changes in overall movement quality. And then my last thing would be, there are specific freezing strategies that are independent of exercise. And I won't go into a ton of them, but knowing to stop, gather yourself, weight shift side to side and take a big step can be key. But often we try to fight through this freeze and keep going, and knowing that it's just stopping and reassessing can be a good way to go from there. And I'd be happy, if you email me to talk more about that too. It varies.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry. She asked if physical therapy still requires a physician order. It varies by state and based on insurance. I would recommend if you reach out to any physical therapy clinic, they're going to be more than happy to help facilitate that referral if you need one, and check on insurance for you too. Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. And like I said, please feel free to reach out with any questions.
Okay, we're going to get started again. So we start finding our way back to our seats, settle in again. We have our next speaker here coming up. So it's my pleasure to introduce one of my colleagues, Colum MacKinnon. He's a professor of neurology, a fellow in the Institute of Translational Neuroscience, and the director of the Movement Disorders Laboratory at the University of Minnesota. His laboratory is focused on understanding the mechanisms contributing to impaired movement control in people with Parkinson's disease and other movement disorders. The Movement Disorders Laboratory is part of the University of Minnesota Udall Center of Excellence in Parkinson's disease research. So without further ado, I'll have Dr. Colum MacKinnon come up here and give his presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Oh, that's loud. Yeah, I'm Colum MacKinnon. First of all, I apologize to people who have heard my talks before. I'm going to do the same shtick. I always do the same shtick. My goal with this particular talk is to provide a few nuggets of wisdom, a few nuggets of strategies to help you with your walking, with your balance, and with movement in general. And I actually have to have a big thanks to Beth. So there's going to be some overlap, some redundancy between what Beth talked about. And I'm going to say basically the same thing and maybe give you a couple additional details. But what Beth talked about are things that our principles are near and dear to my heart in terms of basic principles for movement. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 5 major barriers to movement. I'm going to talk about strategies to overcome those barriers. I'm going to talk about the ingredients for quality movements with a real focus on walking and balance. And I'm going to talk a little bit about exercise if I have time, because we always have to talk about exercise because it's so important. So it's really important to keep in mind that there's a full spectrum of movement abilities and disabilities in people with Parkinson's disease, people from early stage to later stage disease. And the principles I'm going to lay out for you hold for whatever stage you're in, whatever your state of mobility is, whatever your impairments are. These same principles hold for everyone. And our goal here with giving you tips and principles for moving well is try to prevent something we call the vicious circle of Parkinson's disease. So what Parkinson's disease does is it creates these motor impairments, changes in your walking, changes in your posture, falls, etc. And there's also non-motor features, depression, apathy, cognitive decline. And what happens is when you've got these motor features, you tend to stop walking. You tend to stop moving. And that leads to increased depression, increased apathy, decreased social life, and therefore it starts going in this vicious circle. And what we know is really key to breaking this vicious circle is physical activity, quality movements, and continuing to have social interaction. And these are really, really important. And a really key ingredient for this is being able to walk, being stable and preventing falls, and continuing to have as active a lifestyle as you can. So how are we going to break the cycle? So this is my recipe for a great movement hot dish, better known as a casserole in Canada. I will speak in Canadian or American. I can translate in either one, but this will be mostly in Canadian. So the ingredients for a great movement hot dish are strength, which Beth already talked about. Strength is super, super important. Range of motion, so big range of motion. Balance, posture. Adaptability, what I mean by adaptability is the ability to move over uneven environments and different environments that have obstacles, low light and high light, the ability to move freely through changing environments, and eventually to have some endurance. And most important, since it's a hot dish, we need tater tots. And that's arguable. So Beth showed this wonderful video of a lady who had gone through big and loud therapy. And what you saw in the first video is these short shuffling, low velocity movements. And then the next video, you saw her walking with these big strides, big arm swings. So what are you seeing when you see that improvement in movement? And what you're seeing is something we call power. And what power is 2 things. It means large amplitude movements with velocity and strength. That's how you have power. So if you want to move more quickly from A to B, you need power. So the ingredients to power are force, strength, and velocity. How do you get strength? With strength training, very specific strength training. How do you get velocity? Is by having big amplitude movements. Large amplitude movements have much higher velocity than short, small amplitude movements. So this is the basic principle for big and loud, is large amplitude movements with intensity, which gives it force, that gives you power. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of these ingredients as we go one by one. So fourth generation of strength. So the bad news is that as we all get older, we start to get weaker. And so when you hit around 60 years of age, like myself, I'm getting a little bit weaker. And every decade, I get weaker and weaker. But the good news is we already know that you can improve your strength at any age. You can get stronger at any age as long as you engage in a progressive strengthening program. So this decline is in some ways preventable and treatable. The double-edged sword is Parkinson's disease is typically in older people. And so you're getting weaker because you're older, but you're also getting weaker because you have Parkinson's disease. And what this plot shows actually is the strength in the flexor and extensor muscles when you're off medication, when you're on medication, and that strength relative to matched controls. And what this data shows you is if you're off your medication, you're much weaker. And if you're on medication, you get stronger, but you're still not as strong as a matched individual to yourselves. Most importantly is that the weakness is higher in the extensor muscles than the flexors. So your extensors tend to get weaker faster and more in Parkinson's disease. So what are your extensor muscles? And pardon me while I'm going to jump around. What do your extensor muscles do? So I'm going to activate my ankle flexor, my ankle extensors. And now I'm going to activate my knee extensors. And now I'm going to activate my hip extensors. Now I'm going to activate my back extensors. Do you see something in common with this? They're all anti-gravity muscles. They prevent you from falling down. So if your extensors get weak, your ability to hold yourself against gravity becomes much more challenging. So when you see Beth and you go for that exercise program, she's going to give you extensor training. You really, really focus on the extensors because that's what holds you against gravity. That's what prevents the postures. So extensors, extensors, extensors. So that's nugget number one. I'm not going to go into this detail because Beth already talked about this. We already know that with a fairly simple progressive exercise program, you can get stronger. So this is actually just data from a 2-year randomized control trial of progressive strength training in people with Parkinson's disease. And what they compared is progressive strength training versus the standard fitness counts programs, which was non-progressive exercise, non-progressive strengthening. And when they compared these two exercises, and people did this 2 times per week for 90 minutes. And I can say that again, they did this for 2 times a week for 90 minutes, right? So 2 1.5-hour sessions per week and no other exercise. And they did this for 2 years religiously. And what happened is it's an exercise strengthening program. So they got stronger. So their flexors got stronger and their extensors got stronger. And there's been parallel studies with the legs showing that the leg extensors can also get stronger. So that's great. It's a strengthening program. You should get stronger. The other thing they showed that is over the course of 2 years, their severity of their motor science got less. So remember, Parkinson's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative disease. And over the course of disease, the disease should get worse. The severity should get worse. But in this 2-year trial of progressive strength training and fitness counts, at the end of 2 years, their UPDRS severity rating was down 6 points relative to baseline. And once again, this is 2 times per week for 90 minutes, and people's symptoms are less 2 years later. And Beth is talking about if you up this to 3 times per week for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, imagine what the benefits are. Movement rate. So one of the barriers to good quality movement is the tempo at which you make your movements. So I'm going to run this video here. This is going to work. So actually, this is a gentleman we are studying. Actually, Dr. Mann was studying it in the Udall Center. And he's making movements from one target to another. And we're actually recording his brain activity while he's doing this. And he has a little beep. And he said, hit the targets at this rate. So it's going beep, 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 beep. And now it starts to go beep, 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 beep. And what you'll see is his movement locks up. His movement amplitude goes down, and he actually has what looks like upper limb freezing. Goes back to the low rate, movement comes back. It goes fast, and he'll lock up. And this is what we tend to call the movement rate barrier. So the tempo at which you move affects the quality of your movements. So repetitive movements have a barrier in most people with Parkinson's disease. That barrier tends to be around 2 movements per second. Unfortunately, this movement barrier, this 2 movement rate per second barrier, tends to be resistant to both levodopa replacement therapy and deep brain stimulation. So this freezing you get at these high tempos tends to occur that's independent of the dopamine therapies and the deep brain stimulation. So how do you overcome this problem? So you can move at nice low tempo, big amplitude. When you want to move at a fast tempo, low amplitude, your quality of movement is going to deteriorate very rapidly. So slow down, reduce the movement rate. So you can still go fast from A to B, but the rate at which you're doing that, slow it down. Keep the movement large and do the movement with vigor. So fast, hurried movements, high tempo, low amplitude are going to be very poor quality. Slow it down, slow up the rate, and do it with much more vigor, and it will probably go much better for you. Okay, range of motion I'm not going to touch on much, but range of motion gives you velocity. Once again, strength and velocity gives you power. When you're walking, if you start taking short steps and you do that over repetitively over, if you're walking across a hallway, those shorts will progressively typically get shorter and shorter and shorter, particularly if you have freezing of gait. So bottom line is make your steps long, nice wide strides, big arm swing. And what will happen is you'll have a much more consistent stride. If those start to get short, they will continue to get shorter and shorter. And as I'll talk about in just a minute, the problem with that is your body mass that's way above your feet will start going at a different speed than your legs, because your legs are taking a short step, and they will overcome your legs and you're more likely to have a fall. So again, big amplitude movements, big steps as best as you can, do them with vigor, do them big and loud. I'm going to pass by. This is just the big and loud therapy. So we've already talked about that. Okay. But we do know that if you do a program of big and loud therapy, so you're really working on having big steps, nice big arm movements done with vigor, that if we follow you up over weeks past that therapy, you will tend to have less symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So again, it's something that's maintained. It's something that's very, very good at making you move better and decreasing the severity of your disease. Self-initiation. Okay. So most of you have probably seen this video before, but I always have to do my same shtick on this particular video. So this is what we call a paradox Parkinson's disease. So this is a gentleman with very severe freezing of gait, having trouble stepping. And he gets this external visual cue from his caregiver. And she says, step over my foot. And that allows him to step. And then he'll freeze again. She will again say, step over my foot. And he's able to step. And now he's going to have sort of a catastrophic failure of the whole postural system. Again, lack of extensor strength, loss of postural stability, and he's having terrible troubles with freezes. Okay. So here's my usual shtick. So what this gentleman has going for him, which many people in this audience has going for them, is he's Dutch. It's always good to be Dutch. How many people are Dutch here? So it's good to be Dutch. Just the good, you have an orange shirt on, it's good to be Dutch. And so he's Dutch. Now, what is it that the Dutch are particularly really, really good at? Riding bikes. If you've ever been in Amsterdam, there are bikes everywhere. Bike lanes. There are way more bikes than cars. So he's Dutch. So he's used to getting, at age of 2, you get a bike. At the age of 2 here, you get a football, you get a basketball. If you're Dutch, you get a bike. So this same gentleman on the same day, we're going to throw him on a bike. And we're going to push him down the road without a helmet. And away he goes. I've been watching this video for years, showing this, and it never gets tired for me. And there's all sorts of examples. And actually, there are some people in this room who know that this is a phenomenon that works. And they can be severe freezer, severely akinetic, put them on a bike, and away they go. He doesn't crash here, but because he's Dutch, he's also a little cheeky and competitive, and he's going to get out of the saddle and he's going to sprint. There he goes. And he's going to come to a stop here, get off his bike, and then I want you to watch very closely. And he's now going to try to step. And he's frozen. So what I like to do with this video is to really hammer home, and I'll give you some data in just a second to show in the Parkinsonian brain, there are great movements. They are sitting there waiting to be released. They're really well organized. You can plan those movements. You can put all the spatial temporal sequence together. It's just you have troubles getting access to it. For some reason, he has access to his cycling program, but he doesn't have access to his walking program. So, and everybody has great movements in their brain, even in more severe disease. There are great movements sitting in your brain. It's just we have to figure out how to get to it. So for example, how do you initiate walking? So the way you initiate walking is you stand there. Now, the last thing you want to do if I want to do a right step is lift my right foot up. That's not how you initiate walking. If you want to initiate walking with the right step, the first thing I do is I put all my weight on my right foot, and then I push myself over to my left, and then I walk. It's called an anticipatory postural adjustment. And this is the pressure beneath your feet. It goes towards your right foot, and then switches over to your left, and then you take a step. Your brain knows this. It's a brainstem generated pattern, and that pattern becomes abnormal in Parkinson's disease. You lose access actually to this anticipatory step. Just look at this. So this is what the data looks like in a person who doesn't have Parkinson's disease. It's showing activation on the top plot of the muscle required to do this step. It's showing a nice little shift in pressure beneath the feet, and it's showing this loading of your right leg followed by unloading of your stance leg. And this is what it looks like in a person with Parkinson's disease. So this muscle activity is now disorganized, it's low amplitude, it's weak. And this shift in pressure is gone, and the shift in weight has gone. So in this same person with Parkinson's disease, this is what happened when they self-initiated walking. So they stood there and we said, whenever you're ready, start walking. So self-initiated, they start walking on their own. On the next trial, we say, don't start on your own, just wait until we flash this light in front of you. And when you see the flash of light, I want you to step. And when you do that, the muscle activation is at least double. The shift in pressure is there. The shift in weight is there, and it's a beautiful, almost completely normal step. On the absolute next trial, and this is off medication. So if it's self-initiated walking, about 1 in 5 trials are problematic. It's missing this shift. If we give you a visual cue, an acoustic cue, vibrotactile cue, it becomes 1 in 100 trials are problematic, 1 in 100. So providing a visual sensory cue, acoustic cue, really powerful at getting into the brain and releasing those really good quality movements. And we spent time looking at the timing of the cue, the type of cue to present, any combination. So this is for people that are caregivers or people that are working with people with Parkinson's disease. Here's the bottom line of 4 years of research. So if you have a person who is having troubles initiating, you're going to give them a warning cue and you give them a go cue. So if a person's starting to walk, I want you to say, wait there. I'm going to say, get ready. Go. Get ready. Go. So what the get ready does, it tells the brain, okay, I need to get ready to do a right step. And your brain will actually put all the bits and pieces together in that delay interval. It'll know what muscles to turn on. It'll know how to shift the weight, where the pressure needs to go, but it needs time to put that together. So that's why you say get ready. And then when you say go, that releases the program. And the quality of the movements, just with that simple instruction, is fantastic. So it took us thousands of NIH dollars to figure this simple instruction out. And that's what came out of this research. But it turns out it's extraordinarily powerful. Works really, really well. Okay. So a question I normally get asked at this point in time is, well, can I cue myself? Because I'm not always around a caregiver. So can I just say, get ready, go to myself? And so we actually did this study. This is actually done by Dr. Petrucci, who was a postdoc in our lab at the time. And he asked that question, say, well, if I hold the cue, so if I hold a button that gives you a sound, and when you hear that sound, you start walking, do I get the same effect as if I gave you the button and you press the button? So externally cued, so the experimenter providing the cue versus the patient, the participant, pressing the button. And so what happened is when Matt pressed the button, people stepped beautifully. Beautiful muscle activity, beautiful pressure shift, shift in weight, beautiful self-initiated walk, beautiful gait initiation. Then we gave the button to the patient and we said, when you press the button, you're going to get a go cue and away you go. And it didn't work at all. No matter what cue we gave them, it didn't work at all. So you cannot self-cue yourself. Okay? It's like if someone beside you, if you reach over and you tickle them right now, you can tickle them. You can be tickled, but you can't tickle yourself. It has to be something from the outside in. So that sounds like bad news. Maybe this answer, yeah, we'll come down to So Matt had the clever idea. So well, let's rather than have you provide the go cue, why don't you press a button that gives you a warning cue? And then with a timer, a go cue will go off. So the difference now is you'll press a button, get a warning, get ready, and a go. Get ready, and a go. And when he pressed the ready button, followed by a go, they step beautifully. So about a 5% increase in body weight underneath the feet. That's a great increase. That's a beautiful increase. And then he gave it to the patient and said, what patient presses the button and that gives the warning, get ready, followed by a go. And that works great. Actually, even worked better than us cueing them. And then the interesting thing is he basically also had them push the button as a warning cue, but nothing happened, but it was followed by a go cue. And what happened? They did great. So if you can self-warn yourself, let yourself know that you're about to step and give yourself time before a go, then it'll be effective. But the go has to be delivered by something else. So I think you were mentioning a cell phone. We're actually working with a company that is going to do this. If we sense a freeze, the cell phone is saying, basically, I've sensed you freeze, get ready, go. Or the person is frozen, they'll press the button on the cell and it'll go, ready, go. Very simple solutions, but very effective at overcoming freezing, overcoming gait initiation issues. Okay, balance and posture. So I want to introduce you to Sven. I would tell you that this is the problem and the beauty of walking. So this is Sven. He's Swedish. He's not Dutch. Here's Sven. So Sven's a really good walker. He has all of the apparatus necessary for walking, nice big base of support. He's got this rhythmic automatic motor generator that allows him to walk. So when I turn on his locomotor pattern rhythm, Sven can walk. Great. All by himself. Well done, Sven. And then Sven gets ambitious and Sven goes to Sweden and goes to the Swedish Institute for Neuroscience and becomes really smart. So here's Sven with a much bigger brain. His brain actually weighs about 10 pounds now. Same locomotor apparatus, same base of support, but now he has a lot more weight up high. And Sven is extraordinarily unstable. So the principle here is what we call the two-thirds problem. The two-thirds problems is 2/3 of your body mass is located 2/3 of body height above the ground. I'll say that again. 2/3 of your body mass is located 2/3 of body height above the ground. So if you weigh 150 pounds, 100 of those pounds is above your hips. Now, if you're like me, lifting 100 pounds is hard. And once 100 pounds gets moving, it's really, really hard to stop. That's what we're doing every time we stand, every time we take a step. You have this big mass up really high on these spindly little legs and a tiny base of support. And for the most part, it's not a problem. We've been doing that all our lives. When Parkinson's disease hits, it becomes a big problem, particularly if there's short steps. If your base of support is not sufficient, you have to control that big mass. Typically, when we walk, actually our center of mass is on the inside of our feet, but we spend 80% of our walking on one foot typically, which means our center of mass actually is on the inside of my leg, which means I'm always falling to the inside. You take a step, you fall to the inside. You take a step, and you fall to the inside. So we're inherently unstable when we're walking typically. So the way we compensate for this instability is every now and then we have both feet under the ground, planted on the ground. We call that double support. Now, typically double support is about 20% of the stride cycle when you're walking. But if you start having problems with stability, you need to increase the duration of the double support. So if a person's walking with postural problems, with instability, you need to have more time with both feet on the ground, and often with a wider stance with a bigger base of support. And that will normally happen automatically, and often you need to think about it as well. So this is something that is a really common cause of falls, is people forget that they need to slow down. When you slow down, you have more time in double support, and you need to increase your base of support. Okay, so key feature of quality, stable gait. The other thing is, if I have this big mass that's walking and I stop, it wants to go forwards. Or if I'm accelerating, that mass wants to go backwards. So what controls the movement of my trunk in this direction are my hip flexors and extensors. What controls the direction of my trunk in this direction are what we call gluteus medius, your abductor muscles. Those muscles have to be strong in order for you to maintain proper posture and to control yourself during gait. So I'm guilty of this as well. When I watch people walk, I stare at their legs. What's happening with their legs? Where's their foot placed? Do they have double support? And then they've got this trunk that's not well controlled. So priority number one is, first of all, you have to be able to support yourself against gravity, extensors, and you have to be able to control your trunk. And the way you control your trunk is with strong hip flexors and extensors, strong core, abdomens, and back muscles in all planes, side to side and backwards and forwards. If you can't control your trunk at your hips, you will not be able to walk properly. So it's really, really important to have the trunk control before you try to do activities that are much more challenging. Okay, so keys to balance. I think Beth touched on all of these. So core is really important. Hip extensors and flexors need to be strong. Hip abductors and adductors, the ones that control movement, have to be really, really strong. Foot placement, if it's too narrow, you have a high likelihood of having to fall. If it's too wide, it tends to have your step length is too short. So I'll just demonstrate. If I'm walking like this, it's really hard to take a wide step, but I'm really stable, right? But you're doing that at the expense of a shorter step. Remember, short steps, not good. You start to festinate, you can start to lock up. So there's something in between in which you've got a wide base of support, but now you have a decent length step. Really important to do this in an active way in which you are always challenge yourself. So practice losing and regaining balance while taking steps forward and backwards, left, right, diagonally. This is something physical therapists do all the time. And continually adjusting to challenging demands of the environment. Really, really important to challenge. Now, the bad news is that about 60% of people with Parkinson's disease will have a fall in the next year. That's about double the rate of an age-matched cohort. So falls are really, really common in people with Parkinson's disease. And as the disease progresses, the frequency of the falls tends to go up. Falls typically occur during, back up. The two major causes of falls are postural instability, that inability to control your trunk and maintain yourself against gravity. That's the number one cause of falls, is postural instability. Number two is freezing. And when do falls occur? They occur during turns, by far the most common during turns, bending over, standing up and starting to walk, or when you're standing and initiating walking. And so what do all of those things have in common? They're what we call movement transitions, in which there's a change in the state in which you're walking. So you can be walking fine and you go to turn a corner, that's when the fall occurs. You're walking down a hallway and you're slowing down to the doorway, that's when the fall occurs. You're getting up from your chair, from a place of stability to a point of instability, that's when the falls occur. And again, the features for maintaining stability during those transitions are having the core strength, being able to support yourself against gravity, and making sure your base of support is sufficient before you actually do the task. That's really, really important. Actually, and we have a researcher here, actually, who I work with, Dr. Amundsen Huffmaster, who's actually researching what is happening with the brain during these transition phases that are causing freezes and falls. So it's a really, really important topic, and we really don't know why these transitions are the trouble point. So I'm getting the red flag. I'm just going to go back to my recipe. So remember, strength, range of motion, balance, adaptability, endurance, and tater tots. And so with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. MacKinnon. We have a question from an online viewer. What helps if a Parkinson's patient has neuropathy and dystonia of the legs and feet?
Yeah, the neuropathy is well, I'll start with that one. So the neuropathy is problematic in that, so we've actually tested cueing on people using a vibrotactile stimulus. And if a person has a peripheral neuropathy, so if you can't feel the stimulus, and this holds for any of the sensory modalities, if you can't respond to the sensory modality, if you have poor vision, poor hearing, poor sense of touch, if the stimulus that's being provided as the cue is something you can't feel or see, then it doesn't work. So we found actually, I think it was 20 to 30% of the people we gave a vibrotactile stimulus to the ankle did not work because people couldn't feel it. If we gave them a visual stimulus, if we gave them acoustic stimulus, the cueing worked fantastically. It worked really, really well. Now, dystonia, that's a really tricky one. I'm not sure how to answer that, but the trick with lower leg dystonia is, first of all, making sure that the movements are large, and that with the dystonic posturing, that the base of support is where it needs to be, and that tends to be the most problematic in terms of falls. Is the dystonia will lead to a step that's short, or a foot placement that's incorrect, or the foot placement is highly variable from step to step. And that's a really common thing in Parkinson's disease. It's not that the gait is abnormal, it's just highly variable from step to step. And actually it's a sign of cognitive decline, is having variability. So if you have things like neuropathy, dystonia, they're also going to compound that variability, and you don't know where your foot is going to be from step to step, particularly if you're on an uneven surface or if there's obstacles. It becomes really, really problematic. So again, slow down, big amplitude movements, make sure you've got a base of support that's sufficient, and you have to have the good core.
Doctor, I have a question in reference to when you're dealing with your feet touching the ground itself, there's times where I feel I'm standing on a bladder or something. So the balance itself is such that and it actually feels like I'm sitting on, I don't know, water bed or whatever the case may be. So where does that connect with the walking aspect of it.
So a key feature for any kind of, activity where you're going to be supporting yourself with your feet is you need to know where your feet are, and you need to have appropriate sensation back from your feet. And so what we call this is proprioception, a sense of where your ankle joint is in space, sense of where your feet are relative to one another. So if there's neuropathy that's involved, you'll tend to lose that sense of where your feet and your ankle position is. And it's the Parkinson's disease, there's a decrease in proprioception, a decrease in your ability to know where your limbs are. One of the features of big and loud is not only moving with big amplitude and intensity, but it has this component of making movements where you are aware of where your limbs are, your arms and legs. And that's something that's trainable. So proprioception is something we certainly in the on medication state is something that you can train, but you have to go through a formal training program in proprioceptive sense in order to maintain that. So otherwise, I would say, a neurologist would try to treat the neuropathy as best as they can to maintain as much position sense and pressure sense beneath your feet as possible.
Yeah, I'm able to walk if but if I were to walk across the open area, then I might break down, as far as walking is concerned. But okay, thank you.
Sorry, can walking in water? Fantastic idea. So aquatic programs, I 1000% recommend. So what does aquatic program do for you? It allows you to do large movements against resistance with body support. It's fantastic. It's warming, so your muscles will be a little bit more functional. Yeah, and I mean, just the resistance. So if you walk faster, the resistance is higher. If that's too hard, you walk a little bit slower. You still, the waves will give you some posture instability, which is something we want to train. But if you're having issues with posture and balance, and you want to train, go into an aquatic program and start doing walking laps in the pool. And you want that pool depth to be above hip. So you want, because it'll support your trunk, so you can learn how to support your trunk. And then actually, as you get better and better, walk in shallower. So now your trunk is free and now it has more of a challenge to it. So yeah, aquatic programs, highly recommended.
Was to steer into the wall. And so I got a U-step walker, which is the opposite of most walkers. And you move it by squeezing the handles. And when you let them go, they stop immediately. And that has helped me a lot. I didn't bring it with me today because it's harder to transport. It's heavy, but it's really been helpful.
And the only thing those are great devices. They're fantastic. So if people should ask you about the U walker, it's really good. So one of the things I want to make sure I drive home though is that no matter what you're doing in terms of postural stability, balance training, walking training, you need to do it such that you're safe. So if you need a 4-point walker, if that's what provides you with safety, that's great. But if you're still at risk of a fall, then that's not good. You need something that provides you with safety. So one of the biggest causes of a sedentary lifestyle in Parkinson's disease is fear of falling. So again, 60% are going to have a fall sometime this year. Often those falls will be severe. And what happens is there's fear of falling, and the fear of falling leads to lack of mobility, lack of walking, and then you get weaker and you get a decreased range of motion, and there's that vicious cycle. So it's really, really important as much as possible to put yourself in a situation where you're comfortable, where fear of falling is not a factor in your mobility. So if it needs to be a 4-point walker, if it needs to be a cane, if it needs to be Nordic poles, anything that gives you that stability so you will do the activity is really, really important. And we're just now getting a really good feel for why fear of falling is such a big issue in this disease, because it's really, as I said, it's the #1 driver of lack of activity and sedentary lifestyle.
We have time for one more question.
Are there cue devices out there right now?
There are cue devices out there right now. So the basic cue devices that I'm aware of either give a constant cue, so you'll set a metronome, or I think it was proposed that you could just find a piece of music on your phone, and so it'll be a constant tone, boop, 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 and that's very good at keeping your gait cycle going. But in a transition zone, those become much more problematic. And we don't really know how to best cue transitions. But if you stay with the tempo, they tend to work well. This is for constant rhythmic movements. For initiating movements, there are devices that are coming onto the market that will sense when you've stopped and provide a cue. So there's a system actually out of the Netherlands, in which basically they have a laser that's attached to your foot on both feet. And when your foot falls on the ground, it provides a cue in front of you, a laser cue. And when your next foot goes down, it provides the next cue. So you have something visual that's providing that information. Now, we're not aware of any system that provides the ready go instruction. So we're hoping people will pay attention to that, how important that is. So if you're having troubles with initiating, providing a simple cue will be effective, but it will be much more effective if that simple cue is preceded by a ready cue. But there's lots of devices. There's a lot more that are coming down the road for sure. We've been talking about AI a lot. There's now AI algorithms that are being developed that will allow your phone to detect freezes. And when it detects a freeze, will give you cues, will change your environment. You could have VR goggles. That's actually all happening right now at the research level. It's exciting. It's really cool.
Thank you so much, Dr. MacKinnon.
So the oral dissolving levodopa, which still goes into your stomach, but by then it's sort of liquid, and so feels like it may not get quite as bungled up in the stomach emptying issues. So what about intestinal issues? Well, anybody in the room can tell me it's slow. And among other things, levodopa has to get past the stomach and past the first section of the small intestine, the duodenum, into the jejunum before it actually gets absorbed. And so if everything's just kind of sitting there and nothing's moving, you may not actually really be absorbing your levodopa very well. And then if you're not absorbing your levodopa very well and nothing's moving, again, worse appetite, more constipation, abdominal pain, and then all the secondary effects of constipation. So people strain at the stool and your hemorrhoids can pop out, or you can get a prolapse in the rectum, or a intestinal blockage. There are all these things that can happen down the road, which hopefully we work on it well enough to kind of keep those things from happening. How do you keep those things from happening? Well, I actually think drinking lots of fluids is probably a good idea. It certainly isn't a bad idea. It's not going to make your bowels move worse. And just think, it may kind of keep, a little more liquid in the stools too. Eating foods high in fiber, and then avoiding foods that tend to make people constipated. So everything that you used to give to your child when they had diarrhea, those would be things that you don't want to eat when you have constipation. So the brat diet, the bananas and rice and toast, that's something you probably don't want to be specifically doing in Parkinson's. And then I've always thought that just doing jumping jacks, just bouncing up and down probably helps jiggle things around, keep things, again, it's not going to hurt. And maybe it just helps to stimulate things a little bit. So you guys did all your gymnastics this morning, right? You should have done these talks in the other order. So if you remember what Dr. MacKinnon was saying, you can, when I'm done, you can all get up and do your karate. What about probiotics? I put a thing in about probiotics just because people talk about it all the time. You can, everybody thinks of probiotics as being natural. Of course, you take your probiotics now in a capsule that contains all the right bacteria, or you could have actual natural probiotics, which would be things like fermented foods like sauerkraut. How many sauerkraut fans do we have in the room? Oh my God. Oh God. You gotta be kidding. Can you raise your hands again? Unbelievable. I can tell I'm in Minnesota. Oh my God. All right. So eat your sauerkraut. It's your natural probiotic. And kefir and kimchi. And so those are sort of natural foods that may have the sort of good intestinal bacteria. What about probiotic supplements? You have to be kind of careful about probiotic supplements. They're not all the same. And I was just reading something last night about a new probiotic thing that they're using as a treatment for people with vomiting and diarrhea. It's got a bacteria called Hafnia in it. Well, you probably don't want to be taking that one if you got Parkinson's. It's going to do the opposite. The number of research studies actually looking scientifically at probiotics is very small numbers of patients, small studies, not treated for very long, but maybe they help certain probiotics and some people help constipation. They probably don't help tremor or, cognition or anything else, but maybe if you're way off. But and most doctors are not going to be able to tell you which probiotics supplement containing which bacteria should you be taking. But there are studies showing that people with Parkinson's have a different set of, so do you know there's one of you and there's something like 20 trillion bacteria in your body. So are you really you? Or are you just this sort of apartment building that all these 20 trillion bacteria live in? And sometimes you get the wrong neighbors moving into that apartment building. And so you bring in the right ones. But again, they have shown that people with Parkinson's usually have a difference. They're high in certain bacteria and low in others compared to people who don't have Parkinson's. Whether that's a cause or effect, nobody really knows. And but stay tuned. Maybe people will do more scientific studies of this in the coming years. So then there's what I'm supposed to talk about, I guess, which is what things do you take? And everybody with Parkinson's needs to take something to keep their bowels moving. And you have to ignore the part on the bottle where it says don't use daily, can be habit forming. That's for everybody else. Remember, you have a disease that's nibbling away at the wiring. And I always think of the garage door clicker. I don't have to think about it. I push the clicker and the garage door opens and I can come out. Well, you push the clicker when you have Parkinson's and the door doesn't open and nothing can come out. And it's because the Parkinson's has nibbled away at the wiring. And so what do I do if the garage door doesn't open? I have to go manually open it. And so again, people with Parkinson's have to overtly do something to keep their bowels moving. I'm not a big fan of the bulk agents for constipation. Most of our patients have bulk up to about here. It's getting the chute to open that's the problem. So we use stimulants, intestinal stimulants like Senna products. And I put the ones in bold are the ones that I tend to use. Stool softeners so that whatever's in there isn't a brick. So docusate or Colase. And then osmotic agents are things that tend to suck more fluid into the bowels and kind of wash things through a little bit better. And the one we often use is Miralax. There are others, I think of things with magnesium in them as being kind of too, strong for daily use. I would tend to reserve those for if it's been a while. And then there's suppositories, so glycerin suppositories, Duclax suppositories, and this may sound a little bit gross, but actually stimulating the rear end, the anus. You may have noticed over your lifetime, you don't have to talk about it, but you may have noticed that if you stimulate that part, it sort of, it responds, it contracts. And so a suppository basically is a socially acceptable thing that you can do to stimulate the anus, and the glycerin may help to kind of lubricate things a little bit. And then there's intestinal lubricants, mineral oil, there's enemas, which hopefully, you only have to get to once in a blue moon. And then how much of what, it really depends on what's normal for you. And what's normal for you may be different than what's normal for you. Some people are happy if they poop twice a week. Other people must have a daily constitutional, or they might as well go back to bed. And then how much senna you need to take to get every other day bowel movement is going to be different from one person to the next. And then there are prescription things, so lactulose, and then there's this whole group of newer constipation treatments that are, that most of which also tend to suck more fluid into the intestines, or cause the intestines to secrete more fluids. These are all expensive and new and need things like prior authorizations. And I have tended to not use them myself. I think if I've tried 4 or 5 different things and it's not working, it's probably time to go see a GI specialist and let them be the ones to decide, is it better to use Linzess or Amitiza? I don't know. And some of these are sort of just barely coming out on the market, but the GI specialist would be, if you really have intractable constipation, I would refer somebody to the GI specialist. And then there are other sort of more invasive things. We can do deep brain stimulation. That's what Dr. Vitek does, but you can also do sacral nerve stimulation. Or some people use biofeedback strategies, and then there may be times where a surgical procedure would be necessary for one reason or another. So that's number 2. Let's move forward to number 1. What about bladder? I'm not going to make you raise, well, maybe I will. Is there anybody in the room who's never had nocturia, bladder urgency, urge incontinence, underactive bladder, or bladder infections? Raise your hand if you've never had any of those things. Stunned silence. Okay. All right. So we've all had some of this some of the time, and people with Parkinson's have all of it all the time. And over on the right-hand side is a sort of diagram of the bladder. The bladder is the sort of pink thing with a tube at the bottom and kind of a container at the top. And then there's blue and yellow and pink nerves that go to the bladder and either turn it on or turn it off, or make the bladder muscles constrict, and you can see there's sort of a competition. In order to get urine to come out, you want the bladder to squeeze. That big bag at the top has to squeeze. But at the same time, you want the tube to relax and open so that you squeeze the urine and out it comes. And if either of those don't work properly, I mean, so what, if the tube part opens when it shouldn't, then you have leaking. If the bladder doesn't constrict, then nothing comes out, except maybe the bladder gets so full that after a while something has to leak out. One of the problems is that the symptom of overactive bladder, which is the muscle constricting or contracting too much, and underactive bladder, not contracting at all. For the patient, the symptoms are quite similar. You either, if you have overactive bladder, you squirt out a little bit. If you have underactive bladder, nothing comes out except a little bit of leakage. And so to the patient, it feels about the same, but the treatment of these things is complete opposites. So you have to be a little bit careful about just assuming this is overactive bladder due to Parkinson's. Plus, by the way, there's all kinds of other things that can go wrong. Do I talk about that? Yeah. many men have a prostate. And as you get older, that gets bigger, and it could get, it could have prostatitis, it could be inflamed or infected, or you got prostate cancer, you just have enlarged prostate. Women more commonly will have the stress incontinence, so weakness of the muscles, the pelvic muscles that help to keep the little tube closed when you don't want to pee. Recurrent infections. And then there's just plain old bladder things, so polyps in the bladder or strictures in the urethra, all sorts of things that have nothing to do with Parkinson's that can lead to similar symptoms. So once again, I've kind of earlier in my career, I took on the bladder. I said, well, you've got Parkinson's and I'm your Parkinson doc. I'll give you your pills for your overactive bladder. And then I sent a few people to the urologist and was really surprised how often they found something else, either instead or in addition. So I don't examine the bladder. I really don't look at it either on the inside or the outside in my clinic, but that's what the urologist does. They look on the outside. They put a scope in and look on the inside and see what the pressure is and see how much urine comes out and how much doesn't come out. And look for polyps and strictures and so on. And so I do think that you get much more out of at least once going to a urologist to have a thorough evaluation of the bladder before just sort of assuming it's a Parkinson thing. And then how do you treat overactive bladder? Well, like everything else, there's medications and there's non-medication things to do. So I'm a big fan of people just being on kind of a toileting schedule. If you have an accident, if you wait 3 hours, maybe what you should do is set the clock for 2 hours and just go pee every 2 hours, whether you need to or not. So you empty at that point, and then it's not an emergency all of a sudden at 3 hours. Biofeedback, Kegel exercises. Somebody, you want me to talk quickly? Yes, I'll talk quickly. Somebody wrote a question about the Innovo system, which is basically a fancy electronic stimulator to help people do essentially Kegel exercises. Then there are anticholinergic drugs. So if you pee too much, that's the part of the autonomic nervous system, the acetylcholine part that's active when you let things out. And so letting out the stool, letting out the urine, that's a cholinergic system. And if you want to not pee, then you would use an anticholinergic drug. But you can imagine what's going to happen if you take an anticholinergic drug to keep you from peeing. It's also going to keep you from pooping, and can also cause dry mouth and dry eyes and low blood pressure and mental fogginess. Anybody in the room ever had dry mouth, dry eyes, low blood pressure, and mental fogginess? Anyway, yeah. So the problem with all these bladder drugs is that they all have side effects that a lot of our patients have anyway, and it can just make them worse. There's one bladder drug called mirabegron, and it's got a sidekick now that's a similar molecule that works in a different way on the bladder and does not cause all those other side effects and might be better tolerated by people with Parkinson's. And then there's Botox injections or condom catheter set up at night. So so you don't have to get up every 2 hours to pee all night. You just put on the condom catheter and in the morning you empty the bag. And I have occasional patients for whom an indwelling catheter seems to be the best thing. These are usually people really towards the late or end stage of the disease where just getting from the bed to the toilet it requires the help of multiple people. And wouldn't it be nice just to leave a catheter in there and have it be clean and dignified? And then the last slide is just briefly about sexual dysfunction. I'm not generally comfortable talking about sexual dysfunction. I don't feel that I'm an expert in this area, but just because I'm not comfortable and you're not comfortable either doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. Because it also is present in a huge majority of people with Parkinson's. erectile dysfunction, trouble with orgasm, ejaculation, decreased libido in women, vaginal dryness. Now, some of these things happen unrelated to Parkinson's, just with age and hormonal changes. And sexual performance can be impacted by things like psychogenic things like your self-image, and many of the medications you take, both for Parkinson's and other things, alcohol use. If you're on treatments for prostate cancer, all these things can impact on sexual function. There are treatments. The treatments are sort of more well-known for men, but for women, hormone therapies, vaginal lubricants can be helpful. And oftentimes it takes working with partners and not just an isolated individual to really come to treatments that are acceptable to both parties. So in summary, bowel, bladder, and sexual issues are very common in people with Parkinson's. They affect quality of life a lot. And don't be afraid or embarrassed to talk about it because there are treatments for the symptoms. And I'm stopping right now, Erin.
Over here. You saw us coming for you.
I saw you coming.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nance.
In early stage Parkinson's, a person usually takes medicine 2 to 3 times a day.
This may feel pretty normal. They may not even notice the symptoms of Parkinson's. In mid-stage, things are different. The disease affects your movements and a lot more.
This makes managing medicine more complicated. Your care team wants you to have the best control over your Parkinson's symptoms with the least amount of side effects. Not everyone will have side effects. For some, side effects will be mild or even go away.
Medicines are important because they help control your Parkinson's so you can stay active and independent. It's vitally important that you keep moving. The saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, is true in Parkinson's disease.
Let's look at the different types of medicines and their side effects. The side effects we'll discuss are only the most common ones. You won't know how a medicine affects you until you try it.
The best medicines we have for Parkinson's are those that replace dopamine. These type of drugs include carbidopa-levodopa, Rytary, and other levodopa formulas. Levodopa is the drug that's usually given for Parkinson's disease. It's a natural chemical. It goes from your gut into your blood and then to your brain, where it's changed to dopamine.
Levodopa can be short-acting or long-acting. In addition to the pill, it also comes in a form that can be breathed in and a gel that's pumped into the gut.
Researchers continue to study new ways to get levodopa into the body. Feeling sick to your stomach is a common side effect of levodopa. Carbidopa helps with this, and most levodopa medicines also contain carbidopa.
Protein can get in the way of carbidopa-levodopa working. If you eat a meal that has lots of protein, like meat or milk, take levodopa 1 hour before or 2 hours after eating.
If you get an upset stomach, take the drug with foods that don't have protein, like soda crackers or applesauce. Iron can also get in the way of carbidopa-levodopa working. Make sure you take this medication at the same time each day. This will give you the most benefit and make it less likely you'll have off time.
Carbidopa-levodopa may cause nausea or vomiting, lightheadedness, dizziness, blurry eyesight, trouble pooping, dry mouth, tiredness, seeing things that aren't there, and wiggly movements. The color of your spit, pee, or sweat may become darker. It may also lower your blood pressure.
Another type of Parkinson's medicine is called dopamine agonists. They act like dopamine. They include ropinirole, pramipexole, rotigotine, and apomorphine. Your doctor may give you these drugs when you first have signs of Parkinson's, but more likely you'll get them after you've already been taking levodopa for a while. These drugs can help with wearing off.
They have the same side effects as carbidopa-levodopa. Agonists can also cause too much shopping, eating, gambling, and thinking about sex.
If you have any of these side effects, tell your care team. They can start right away, or they may not show up for years. Other side effects that might happen are being very sleepy during the day, seeing things that aren't there, confusion, and leg swelling.
COMT inhibitors act like dopamine boosters. They help levodopa work better by getting more of it to the brain. They can make off time shorter and on time longer. Taken alone without levodopa, these medicines don't help with Parkinson's. You have to take them at the same time that you're taking the levodopa.
These drugs include entacapone, tolcapone, and opicapone.
Stalevo is a combination of carbidopa, levodopa, and entacapone. Side effects include confusion, seeing things that aren't there, diarrhea, and a change in the color of your pee.
MAO-B inhibitors are drugs that make it so the dopamine in your brain lasts longer. They can't be used alone in early stage Parkinson's.
More often, they're used in mid to late stage Parkinson's to make off time shorter and on time longer. They don't slow down the disease like we used to think they did. Examples of these medicines are selegiline, rasagiline, and sulfonamide.
The most common side effects of MAO-B inhibitors are feeling sick to your stomach, dry mouth, lightheadedness, and trouble pooping. You shouldn't take these medicines together with certain other medicines, like some cold medicines and some antidepressants.
Talk with a pharmacist before you start taking an MAO-B inhibitor or an antidepressant. Amantadine, Gocovri, and Osmolex are drugs that are often used to treat wiggly movements. Gocovri and Osmolex are newer, long-acting forms of amantadine.
Like most new medicines, they can cost a lot of money. Amantadine can also be used to treat mild signs of early Parkinson's like tremors, but it stops helping after a while.
Amantadine's most common side effects are feeling sick to your stomach, dry mouth, lightheadedness, trouble sleeping, confusion, seeing things that aren't there, changes in how much or how often you pee, trouble pooping, leg swelling, and purple webbed patches on the skin on your legs. A rare side effect is blurred vision. Blurred vision will go away when you stop the medicine. If you have kidney disease, you may have to take less of this medicine.
It's very important to tell your care team when and how much medicine you're taking, any side effects you're having, and when they happen. They need to know how long after taking your medicine the effect happens. That's how they will know if they need to make changes to your medicine.
If your off time is very bad, there are some things that you can do to help. First, try chewing a half tablet of carbidopa levodopa and swallowing it with fizzy water. This is an easy way to treat off time.
You can also try other newer drugs, but they cost more, take about the same time to work, and don't last long.
They include a form of levodopa that you breathe in called Inbrija, and a film that you put under your tongue called Kemobi. Managing peak dose dyskinesias can also be hard. Your doctor may start by giving you less levodopa or taking out other drugs.
Sometimes adding amantadine can help. The challenge is to give you enough levodopa to make you feel better, but not so much to cause the wiggly movements. It can be a trade-off.
Dystonia is when your muscles tighten up for no reason. It can hurt. How to deal with this cramping depends on when it happens. If it happens in the early morning, your doctor may add levodopa or a long-acting dopamine agonist at bedtime. Or they may have you take levodopa between midnight and when you get up.
If the dystonia happens when your medication is wearing off, or before it kicks in, your doctor may increase the dose of levodopa or have you take smaller doses more often.
If cramping happens a lot, and not because of when you take levodopa, then you may get botulinum toxin shots. Botulinum toxin works by making the muscles weak for a short time so they don't tighten as much.
So if we can start getting back to our seats, we'll get started here with the next section. And again, thank you all so much for coming out here. It has been wonderful to see everybody here in person. And last year I felt, and I hope everybody agrees, we had such a great experience with the panel discussion that we thought we would bring it back this year. And so today it is my pleasure to introduce Susan Vold. She's she's a board certified holistic and neuroscience nurse who manages patient care with the Movement Disorders Clinic at M Health Fairview. She has extensive experience in Parkinson's disease. And in addition, she is the clinical program manager for the M Health Fairview Deep Brain Stimulation Program. And as many of you know, she leads the patient education classes in Parkinson's disease and deep brain stimulation. So I will let her introduce our panelists for the day and get going with the discussion. Thank you so much.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. And I have to thank these brave people that are sitting up in front of the stage for everybody. I want to introduce each one of them. And if they would please let us know how long they have had Parkinson's disease. So I'm going to start with Scott Balke. Is that the right pronunciation?
Correct pronunciation. Correct pronunciation.
And how long have you had Parkinson's?
October of 2018.
Okay, so he's more of our newer Parkinson's persons. Then we have Mr. Tom Renshaw. How long have you had Parkinson's?
12 years.
Okay, so Tom, 12 years. And then we have Mary Daly representing the female part of Parkinson's. How long have you had Parkinson's, Mary?
A little over 10 years.
Okay, and then we have the famous Dave Egamo. Dave has been with us a while, and I'm so happy to introduce him. How long have you had Parkinson's?
I got young onset when I turned 45, and that was a little over 16 years ago.
Okay, so we've got some different stages of Parkinson's up here. And so I'm going to be asking questions that I just really want their honest answers. And hopefully you can gain something from that, from their experience, strength, and hope. Because of all things, what I want you to go away from here today is hope. And that these people, along with every one of you out there, just need to put one foot in front of the other and walk and not faint. That's the hardest thing we can do. You're going to notice that I have a tremor. I have essential tremor. And whenever someone with a movement disorder is up in front of people or stressed out in any way, they're going to shake, rattle, and roll a little bit more than they usually do. So, all right. So what I'd like to ask these wonderful people is today, at this stage in your disease process, what is your biggest physical, mental, emotional, social challenge that you deal with every day? And how do you cope with it? We're starting with Scott.
Any one of the five? Any one of the five? I'll pick one maybe that's interesting. I'll say the emotional side of having Parkinson's is very challenging. At the start, when I started realizing that I had got the diagnosis, telling others is very difficult. It took me a year before I told peers of mine at work, and I continued to work. And I would say for the first 3 years, it was a very limited number of people that I told it to. And finally, I got to the point where I was just willing to say just about anything to anybody to get the word out. And now I'm quite involved in it. So that's the number one. And the other one that's a little bit controversial is the grieving process that we all go through. We may deny it, that it's there, but I think we all will go through it in different ways. And emotionally, that's very challenging. It was for me anyways. Still is. Still is.
Thank you. Tom, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Let's see if this one works.
It works.
It works.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, when I told my wife I was doing this, I said, I'm going to be really nervous up there because I don't want people to see me shaking. And she goes, you dummy. She used another term for that. But she said, you know what your audience is going to be. So the big thing for me is socially, is fitting in socially. We go out with friends, and it's very easy to sit in the background and just be apathetic and let everybody else do the talking. And so that's the biggest thing for me. And in order to handle that, I do stuff like this. So that's it.
Thank you, Tom. Mary, how about you?
I think for me that my biggest challenge, it combines all these aspects and has to do with acceptance. My body is changing, what I can do is changing, and I have to be much more careful about making sure I'm safe and not falling. And so it can feel like I'm having to think about my Parkinson's far more than I would like to. And then I'm having difficulty accepting that I can't do things like shovel the snow the other last weekend with my son. So the way I cope with it is I have started engaging with the Mindfulness Mondays, those great meditation observances that are broadcast. I think it's the Parkinson's Foundation.
Is it the Parkinson's Foundation?
Yeah.
Mindfulness Mondays? Okay.
Yeah, and so I've at least once a week, I know that I'm going to do that part of it. And then I've reconnected with a therapist that I saw after my husband died. And we just kind of picked up after 20 years, we picked back up. She works a lot with people who have chronic illnesses right now. And that's been helpful too. And sometimes I just don't cope with it very well. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah.
All right, Dave.
Mine, I'll say one of the physical things that I have an issue with, and that's sleep. And getting enough sleep has just always been an issue throughout the 17 years I've been working on this disease. And I've also got the REM behavioral disorder, which is acting out your dreams, which is kind of fun if you're a boxer, because my wife gets to endure the hooks and the jabs that come at her during the evening when she's not prepared for it. So it's another interesting thing. The way that I cope with it is really trying to address the blue screen time that I spend at night, because we've all got a lot nowadays with the phones and everything. We've all got a lot of blue screen time, and I'm just trying to reduce that, and that seems to help out a bit.
Oh, that's really great information for us. One of the reasons why I asked this question about what are your biggest challenges physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, all these things is because, well, I'm a holistic nurse. So I'm looking at that whole piece, because you are not your Parkinson's disease. You are people with all these parts of your life. Now, we all need to wear a tool belt to get through this life, right? And if we've got the right tools, we can get through the right things and kind of have a good life to some degree. And so, but if everything that you have in your tool belt is a hammer, that's not going to work on the things that you need a screwdriver for. And so when Mary spoke about having a therapist, that is an integral part of your journey. When the physical therapist talked about exercise, having physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, those are tools to have in your tool belt. Your movement disorder provider or neurologist, that's another tool. Your spiritual advisor, your church family, or whatever it is that speaks to you, whether it's art and creating things, that's part of your spiritual side. When one part of you is out of balance, symptoms are going to come out sideways, okay? So always use all the tools in your tool belt. What I'd like to talk to these wonderful people now, and I'm going to start on this side. What have others done that has felt right in supporting you at the right time? And what support doesn't feel right? So Dave?
Well, I guess that from my perspective, the most support that people can give me is just to let me know that they've got my back, and then basically treat me the same that they've always treated me. That's my pet peeve is, people showing sympathy, and, I know it's well-intentioned, but it's like, no. I don't need your sympathy. I may need your hand every once in a while to hold on to, but other than that, just treat me like a normal person.
Thank you, Dave. Mary, how about you? What's felt like the right support at the right time and not so great support?
I think that when my friends and family reach out to me and pull me out, invite me out, or say, I'll come and pick you up, or we'll bring the food to you, whatever that is, that's what's been really helpful to me, because I would tend not to reach out as much. I'm just not that way. And what has not been terribly helpful, my dear sweet brother does this occasionally. He tells me I'm so strong. And sometimes that's a weight to carry. When someone tells you that you are so strong, it's like, well, then I can't show the times that I'm not feeling so strong. But yeah, generally it's just the people that make sure they come and get me involved, get me moving. And my dog.
So your brother saying, Mary, you're so strong, you can do this. I mean, certainly well-intentioned, right?
Yeah.
To give you that positive, but at the same time, you're thinking you have to act strong all the time in front of him, or
And I don't really have to. So that's what the conundrum there is a bit, that I think he just means that as a compliment. I just need to take it and not feel any weight from it, because we can talk about being vulnerable with each other very easily. So
being vulnerable in front of safe people who treat you like a human being and don't offer sympathy, but a helping hand. I like that. Tom, how about you? What's the right support for you, and what hasn't felt so good?
Well, any support for me is good. I mean, I'll take it. You know what hasn't felt so good? Well, I think the thing that I like, or that gets me, is when, the friend of mine who's got Parkinson's worse than I do, and we get together for coffee and we both try to help each other out with our coats afterwards. It's like, I hope this doesn't go viral. I'll pass it.
All right, Scott, you didn't think you were getting out of this.
No, I knew I wouldn't. The one that's most challenging for me is, the good. I'm going to talk about the good first. Is one thing that I did to try to get support from, I guess, this community, was that I reached out to a couple people in the room actually, and I said, would you mind being kind of a support person for each other? And it's gone over really well. I feel like I can be open with the individuals that I approached and have similar stories to tell, and can bear my thoughts a little bit better. That's been the really good support.
What has made them safe for you to feel like what you're saying to them is safe?
They listen to me. They listen to me and they let me finish the story. They also will. One thing that is frustrating a little bit, I guess, but good also, is when people will offer to help and say, what can I help you with? And many of you probably know that one of the side effects of Parkinson's as well is decision-making capabilities. And so if you ask me what I can help you with, it really doesn't help me at all. But people know what you need help with: mowing the yard, picking up firewood. I mean, we can make the list. If you approach me and say, Scott, can I help you stack your firewood for the winter? I would love that, versus saying, what can I help you with? Yes, that's it.
Yeah, having too many choices makes a person with Parkinson's almost freeze. There's just too much to choose from. Sometimes when I talk to patients and their significant others, and the significant other will say, well, I asked him where he wanted to go eat dinner. Well, that's too much. I mean, that's just too much. How about, do you want to go to Sarah's Diner or down to Sal's house? Give a choice of a couple things. Let them have a choice. And then the other thing you said that really spoke to me was about having time to respond. We know in Parkinson's disease that things are slower. Thinking is slower. You're not thinking you're still thinking, but coming up with those words might be a little bit more difficult. Let the person with Parkinson's have some time to come up with the words, okay? Let them have time to search their files for the right word or the right thought. In fact, a lot of people avoid social situations because they don't want to get involved in a conversation because they don't know if they'll have time to respond. So giving a person time is really great. All right. Now let's get back to the kind of the theme of today's show, and that is exercise. So Dave, what exercises do you do regularly? If you do, if you don't, you're getting called out right now. How has it helped? And how do you motivate to do it regularly?
Well, I box twice a week. I have a boxing class in Shoreview here. And twice a week during the summer, I golf 18 holes out at Inverwood. If any of you have ever played Inverwood, you know what a difficult path that is. And I walk that 18 holes twice a week. So in between those things, when I can work it in, I go out and walk, and I do things that interest me. Forage for mushrooms, look at birds. Went out and saw ducks yesterday out at the Coon Rapids Dam. They're migrating north right now, so there's a ton of them out there. But I do things that interest me and I like to do. So it engages me and gets my attention and gets me out there to do it.
Thank you. That's very key. Something that interests you, and you use exercise as part of something that you like to do. Mary?
Well, I have to first confess that this winter has really kicked my butt when it comes to exercise. I have a dog and we walk every day, but it's been so icy where I live. I don't have sidewalks and my driveway is steep. And it was really kind of a nightmare scenario for a while. And my whole property is wooded and none of it's level. So, but that being said, my dog is one of my main ways of getting me out every day to walk. And I do that. And then I have a set of floor and exercises that I do that are lifting body weight. So legs, arms, planks, whatever, to try to strengthen that part of me. And I used to have a routine when I was working that I couldn't have my breakfast until I did my exercises. And now my pill regimen has changed some, so it's not quite as easy to do that, but that's part of the way I used to handle it. My other thing that I really love to do is ride my bicycle, but it has to be my tricycle, so it's safe for me, because I crashed on a two-wheel bike back in 2008 and had a bad concussion, even with a helmet. And that kind of kickstarted the early Parkinson's syndrome for me. And so I never got back on a two-wheel bike and after that. But Liz Ogren with Pedal for Parkinson, I went to one of her events and we were able to try out different tricycles. And I bought a really nice tricycle, and it goes really fast. I found that I can even get up on two wheels on it when I'm going a little too fast in a corner. So my sons look at me and say, "Have you learned nothing?" I say, "No, apparently not." But the time I feel most normal in the whole world is when I'm riding that bicycle and the wind is blowing in your face. And I may not be going as fast as I used to, but I'm sure going faster than I can on two legs. And it's really wonderful. So I recommend my trike, my cat trike, 559.
Thank you, Mary. Tom, how about you?
Well, I box 3 times a week. And then I have 2 exercise classes I go to with Margie Crone from Health Fairview. Is it Fairview? Yeah. And then I've got 1 exercise a week with Health Partners Neuroscience Center. And then 3 days a week I try to lift weights, and I'm running out of days, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
Well, sometimes I do 2 a day, but a lot of times I nap afterwards.
That's okay too.
Yeah. So yeah, I try to stay busy. And of course, in the summer when it's nice out like this, I walk. So that's good too. So I stay busy.
That's good advice. Staying busy. Scott?
I guess my preferred exercise is cycling, whether that's indoor or outdoor. And now that we can do outdoor, and one thing that I did to support my cycling desire is I did buy an e-bike a couple years ago, and my wife as well also got an e-bike, so that now we can ride for an extended period of time, get the enjoyment of that, and not have to be wiped out at the end of the day. And I'll just add to Dave's comments, a couple of things is pick an exercise that you enjoy. I've cycled my whole life, so if it was easy for me to pick that and do it with a friend, I think that's important too. And that we can do that with the different support groups that we have, and make it a priority. It has to be on the calendar. I think somebody said that earlier today. So that's it.
How many of you up front here are in a support group for Parkinson's?
Yeah, I guess I consider all my different exercise programs as my support group. And it's nice because I see a lot of different people. So it's great.
So the support groups kind of combine that exercise with some education and
Yeah,
camaraderie.
it's more than it's their support because they're there. It's not so much, I'm going to a particular sport just for support. Because people just end up talking about their problems, seems like. And I'd rather be with people who talk about what they want to do next.
Exactly. So when you are choosing a support group or you go to a support group, remember that you need to feel better leaving than when you walked in. You want to be in the solution and not the problem. And there's many different types of support groups, and they're made up of people, individuals. Every support group has a flavor, a personality. If one's not right for you, another will be. Okay, so keep going until you find the right one. Scott, I'm going to ask you if you could ask one question to someone that has had Parkinson's over 20 years, what would that question be and why do you want to know?
The question I would ask would be, what have you done consistently for the last 20 years that allows you to carry on? It would be very easy for all of us to just give up. And I would be curious as to what they have done to make it 20 years, to make it 30 years, or whatever that amount of time is. And why do I want to know that? Because I plan on beating this thing. Because we all can learn from that, right?
Thank you, Scott.
I guess I'd have to I'd have to take a look and say, is this guy better off than I am or worse off? And if he's worse off, I think I'd ask him, how many things the Twins are going to do this year? So, but if he's better off, I want to know, what's he doing? What's he doing that's different? I mean, is it just, what's going on here? So.
Why do you want to know that?
Well, I just want to see if I can add another exercise to my program.
Another day to your week.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Mary?
I've had trouble coming up with this one. I think that maybe my question would be to them about something that I'm struggling with right now, which is, how do you balance that acceptance of your life as it is and, the disease as it progresses without being depressed, and how do you keep moving forward every day?
This is grief, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
It
day,
is.
like Scott mentioned in the beginning. As time goes on, there are small losses that happen along the way. And it's important to acknowledge them and don't judge them, It's so easy to say this is good or this is bad. And when we judge something like that and give that value judgment, we're really tying ourselves into that outcome, a bad outcome usually. So it's really important to look at what's happening with a realistic eye, acknowledge it, feel all the pain that goes along with it. And then again, put one foot out in front of the other and walk and don't faint. Thank you. Dave?
Well, 3 more years and I'm gonna be that guy. But I think I'd ask what they did that was different from what I'm doing now, and try to learn something that I'm not doing that I don't know. Just, you know, the whole reason for coming to these seminars, learning something new that you didn't know before, and it might help you going forward. Because we can use every little strategy that we can get.
Thank you. I'd like to open this up to if anybody in the audience has a particular question that they'd like to ask one of the panelists. Anybody have a burning desire to ask that question? Yeah, after lunch is tough, I guess. Yeah, nap time. Well, I'd like to ask you guys, Dave, can you tell me anything that you have not had the opportunity to tell me that you really want everybody to know?
Well, I think I've told you just about everything, Susan, but I would just say, you know, the longer that you live with this disease, the more things that you find out to help you along with it along the way, and just hang in there. Because one of the things I heard early on when I was diagnosed with young onset was that when you're diagnosed with young onset, most of the time it's easier to adapt to Parkinson's because you've got more time, you're younger when you get it, and you have more energy and you're in better shape. And that's true, but it wears you down over time. Just hang in there, keep moving, and keep learning.
Thank you, Dave. Same question for you, Mary. What's something that you would like everybody to know today?
Well, I was listening to a Zoom call with a young onset Parkinson's group affiliated with Davis Finney Foundation. And I think the moderator asked people, what's your biggest challenge? And the first respondent said, getting to the bathroom every morning without falling on my face, which was everybody just cracked up and agreed with. So, I mean, that can be the biggest challenge of your day starting out. But then where do you go from there? And get up and just get dressed and go out with the dog or whatever you're going to do.
Thank you. Good advice. Tom.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm drawing a complete blank right now.
That's okay. Do you want us to come back to you?
Yeah, come back to me.
All right. This is unscripted, by the way.
Yeah. The one, maybe something that I'd like to share is that I don't know how many in the room are firstborn. I happen to be male, type A. Anybody else in the room that way? The stress and the anxiety that is in my life, independent of Parkinson's, is a major factor. And so because of that, I'm stressed out a lot. I try to manage that pretty well, but it definitely has a factor on me. In fact, I've said to others that when I was working, the job that I had, I think caused my Parkinson's. Just throw it out there. So stress is a big deal for me. And in managing it is, the way I do it is exercise, meditation. I say good sleep, good food, and lots of water. So that's what I'd add.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, I think I'll close this meeting off. I don't really have any advice for you. I mean, just do it, you know, don't let it define you.
That sounds like great advice. Just do it and don't let it define you. You're so much more than just your Parkinson's. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay, there we go. Thank you to everyone on the panel and Susan for sharing their really thoughtful and wonderful expertise with us. So as we wrap up today's program, a reminder to please complete your evaluation and share your feedback with us. And thank you again to our sponsors, Acadia, Amneal, Boston Scientific, Kyowa Kirin, Medtronic, Neurocrine, and Supernus for supporting this program. And let's share our first raffle winner from the vendor passport.
What a day. It's been so great. So I just want to take a little moment here. Not very well. That's okay. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all again for coming out. People online that aren't with us anymore, but they'll get to watch this after. And for the panelists, again, we know it takes a lot and putting you on the spot is hard, but we really appreciate the advice and just the experience that you get to share with everybody else in the room. And as Josh mentioned earlier, our work would not be possible without the support and participation from people like you here today. So we would really like for you to get to know us a little bit better. And so you can visit our website, written right here, and it's also in your folders on the Udall sheet. And on this website, you'll get to see the people who make up our team. A lot of them are back here on the table back there. Some resources on Parkinson's disease and deep brain stimulation, and get to learn a little bit more about the projects that we're working on. And if you're on Twitter, follow us for more updates. It's at UMN Udall. And don't forget to visit our table back there with Marina and Nisi to hear more about the current research opportunities we have with our team. And I hope you all enjoyed our program today just as much as we did. And we hope to see you again next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for attending the Spring Parkinson Symposium, and we would love to stay connected with you. The best way to stay connected with APDA is to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter. And that weekly email has important information about upcoming events just like this one. You can get connected by emailing us at our email address is right up on the screen, apdamn@apdaparkinson.org. And you can also give us a call at 651-392-8199 with any of your Parkinson's disease questions. You can visit us online at apdaparkinson.org to participate in exercise classes on our virtual calendar of events. And finally, we are hosting our annual Optimism Walk in Roseville, Minnesota on Saturday, September 9th. And we hope to offer some exciting programs this summer as well. So we are looking forward to seeing you again soon.
All right, so as we wrap up the symposium, I hope you feel empowered and educated. We've had so many fun things to talk about today, and just wanted to share a few other things that are happening at the Parkinson's Foundation. Ways for you to be involved, just like attending this event today. But first up is our walk called Moving Day. And maybe you had a chance to talk to Laurel at our table. It's coming up on Saturday, May 6th at Hildy Park in Plymouth, Minnesota. And this helps us continue our mission-driven work, providing care, funding research, and providing free resources and services for the Parkinson's community. So register as a walker, donate, or sign up to volunteer. And I'm sure the snow will be gone by then. So it's going to be a wonderful day. Just the energy in the park is so great to experience. So I hope you can join us. If that's not your thing, we are very excited to have a Parkinson's Awareness Day at Target Field. It will be Thursday, June 22nd. Against the Boston Red Sox at a 12-10 game. Every ticket purchased will have $5 go to one of the following organizations. So as you order, you get to pick if you'd like the donation to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, Parkinson's Foundation, the Struthers Parkinson Center, or the Veterans Affairs. And if you register and can join early, you can join us on for a parade around the ballpark before the game. Yeah, it's a jaunt. It's a it's a bit of a walk. It's actually just amazing to be down there and see the stadium. So there is the website. We'll also include it in the follow-up email. And if you missed it, you got a couple months to get tickets, or you can reach out to us at the foundation. We'll help you find that information. So if that's not your thing, we also have an amazing live event coming, music. We are super ecstatic to announce our first music fundraiser featuring the legendary Flamin' O's plus Annie and the Bang Bang. Anyone know those names? We'll find them online because they're amazing. And it's going to just be really fun to get together on Saturday, July 1st at 7 p.m. So they're Twin Cities rock legends, and they're going to be under the canopy at the Hook and Ladder Theater for an outdoor evening event with a full band performance. And I'm really proud to say that this event has been put on by our chapter board members for leading this event. So we're looking to sell out the canopy. So this will be really an awesome event. So mark your calendars. And lastly, we are here for you. You can reach us for parkinsons.org or connect with our Parkinson's specialist on our helpline. And I also need to mention how we could not do this work alone. We rely on volunteers, advocates, and fundraisers to spread awareness from sharing resources with your support groups, presentations in the community, and events like this. We need your help in reaching everyone affected by Parkinson's. So I'd like you to check out the insert in your folder for more information on our new Parkinson's Foundation Ambassador Program, if there's an interest to get involved. And also that reminds me to thank our wonderful volunteers and staff and our coordinators for putting together this amazing event today. And with that, we have our next raffle winner. Oh, you can pick, Tabitha. I trust you. Oh, you're going to make me do it? Yep. Shake it up, shake it up. I'm going. Okay, here we go. Have to be present to win. Val Anderson. Val, there she is. Congratulations, Val. All right, well, thank you guys for spending your day with us. We're actually wrapping up a little early so you can go out and enjoy that sunshine and that 70-degree weather and get ready for the 80s that are coming. So thank you again.